and we recommend using a headset for best audio quality, and speakers ideally if you have headsets as well. As you would have seen, the meeting is being recorded, and we will share that recording online on the events unique webpage, which the URL is on the screen. And we kindly encourage everybody to have their cameras on if possible throughout the meeting, just to make it just to improve the overall meeting experience. And lastly, throughout the call, we'll be hosting a couple of polls to get some of your feedback and direct feedback on some of the various topics that we will be discussing. So throughout the meeting, there will be some pauses, and a poll should feature on your screen, and we'll give you some time to answer those. And very lastly, some of you are acquainted with Francis and myself, but I'd just like to take this opportunity to introduce Margot Monfarid, who has joined the ICRI Secretariat team, and she's with Francis at the moment. Margot, I don't know if you want to have a quick introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Margot. I've recently joined ICRI, so I've only been here for a couple of weeks now. I was previously working in the Maldives, so I've been working on large-scale restoration projects, looking at asexual propagation as well as sexual reproduction of corals. And I'm happy to be back in London, so nice to meet you all.
Perfect, thank you, Margot. Next slide, please, Francis. So just to run through the agenda very quickly for this call, hopefully you all received the latest agenda. If you're yet to access it in the reconfirmation of the registration link, there is a link in that email that will take you to the dedicated web page where you can download the latest agenda. But for everybody's interest, we'll move into some opening and welcoming remarks following these housekeepings, and then we'll move into a segment on international policies where we'll receive an intervention from Joseph Appiah from the Convention on Biological Diversity. We'll have a report from Margot Hine on the Coral Reef Breakthrough, and then have an introduction to the United Nations Environment Assembly Unit 6 from Ollie Vestergaard. We'll then move into some summaries from theme 1, specifically looking at an update from the Resilience-Based Management Ad Hoc Committee and a pre-recorded update from Ian McLeod regarding the Reef Restoration Ad Hoc Committee, and then we're scheduled in for a short break, but we'll see how we're getting on with timings. Following that, we'll move into theme 2 of the ICRI Plan of Action, so we'll have a update from Britta regarding the GCRMN Steering Committee. And then we'll have some updates on the upcoming ICRI 37th General Meeting, and then an update from the Global Fund for Coral Reefs. We'll then have an update from the Coral Research and Development Accelerator Platform, or CORDAP, and then we'll have a look at some of the upcoming events in which ICRI is involved with. And we'll also have an intervention from Dylan, not from Margaret Johnson, regarding the Pacific Coral Reef Collective being held at the end of July. And then we'll hand over to Jen for a quick intervention regarding El Nino, and then hopefully that will bring us in, as scheduled, into some closing remarks. I believe, next slide please, Francis. So Jen, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thanks for going through the agenda. It's an ambitious one, but we will try to keep things on time. I am Jennifer Koss. I'm the director for NOAA's Coral Reef Conservation Program and the co-chair for the United States of ICRI, along with my esteemed colleague, Christine Dawson. I need to extend apologies on behalf of Chris. She's unavailable to join with us. She's been delayed by family issues. So we're wishing her well, and we'll proceed without her. She did send a note of apologies, and she's sure that we can do just fine without her, but we will be missing her during this meeting, and anything that she was going to add during this meeting, we'll make sure we cover in the Hawaii Fall in-person general meeting. So thank you again for joining, and why don't we go on to the next slide? So I think Francis is going to cover this, and then we will move into the plan of action, and I will quickly cover that. Francis?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jen. So good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all of you. I'm very happy to see that many people on the call. This is great. The idea behind this meeting was just to do like an informative meeting, since hopefully the ICRI General Meeting will be held in a few months, and we'll talk more about this later during this call. So I just wanted to remind you that for this call, like no resolution or recommendation will be presented nor adopted, and we won't review like the member application received so far. Just to let you know that so far we have been receiving 10 new applications from organization and country to become ICRI member. We will look at this during the next ICRI meeting, because I think we all thought it was easier to do this face to face. So that's it for me, and Jen, floor is yours again. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. And now for the plan of action, you can see the QR code there on the bottom of the screen if you want to follow along. And just a note of point here, the agenda has been structured largely to mirror the plan of action. So we'll be following right along as we go through this meeting. So ICRI itself is guided by the plan of action, which in this current one under the United States is really built off of the hard work of previous ICRI co-chairs, and especially our most recent co-chairs from Australia, Monaco, and Indonesia. So thank you for giving us a nice platform to jump off of as we chair ICRI for the next couple of years. Theme 1 is all about preparing for the future and promoting resilience within coral reefs. To support this theme, ICRI's developed ad hoc committees on resilience-based management and restoration, which between the two of them have developed guidance documents, best practices, workshops, data hubs, and knowledge sharing channels focused on these conservation management approaches. We'll hear more about these committees from Dylan Horn and Ian McLeod later in this meeting. Theme 2 is about coral reef science and oceanography, advancing and utilizing the latest science and technology. Under the umbrella of this theme, ICRI has built capacity by conducting international workshops on the integration of 3D photogrammetry and artificial intelligence into coral reef monitoring approaches, and through ICRI support of the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, which we'll also hear about later in this meeting from Britta Schaffelke. Theme 3 is local threat reduction, integrating response planning frameworks. ICRI efforts to support this theme will include consolidating and reviewing existing coral reef response plans to coral disease, vessel groundings, bleaching, invasive species outbreaks, and large storm events in order to identify commonalities in response actions and create a unified coral response framework for managers instead of having several disparate documents to look at. Theme 4 is all about diversity and inclusion, expanding the coral reef community. This theme will be an important component of the ICRI Fall General Meeting, where we'll have the pleasure of holding a listening session on the incorporation of local and indigenous knowledge into management, featuring many different Native Hawaiian, local, and indigenous leaders from multiple ICRI nations, including Kyle White, who is currently at the University of Michigan, who's a Native American and one of 7 distinguished scientists in the country named as U.S. Science Envoys by the U.S. Department of State. Next slide, Francis, please. So I think we have a poll now, and Tom's going to walk us through how to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. So all of you should now see a live poll that is on your screen. So you can simply go through and select the most appropriate answers. We can see from our side the number of responses that we've had. So we'll give around about 30 to 60 seconds for all of you to respond to these questions.
That was super easy, Tom. I've done a number of polls where it's tough. You have to log in with your phone and all kinds of crazy stuff. This is great.
So we've had around about 60% of you have responded. So we'll just give it a few more seconds just to try and get that number a bit higher. Okay. Perfect. So thank you very much to everybody who's responded.
Great. And then Tom, we will have all the data. This gets recorded as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So once so after the call, we'll be able to see everybody's responses as well, and we look forward to following up with people and delving deeper into these themes.
Great. Wonderful. Next slide, please. Okay, so our first major presentation here will be on the Global Biodiversity Framework. Christine had intended to provide a little bit of background of the negotiations that happened a few months ago in Montreal. But right now we will be hearing a pre-recorded video from Joseph Apiat. And he's the coordinator for Marine, Coastal, and Island Biodiversity at the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity.
Greetings, ICRI colleagues and friends. My name is Joe Apiat. I'm the coordinator for Marine, Coastal, and Island Biodiversity at the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I deeply apologize that we're unable to be there with you live during this very important meeting, but I'm actually here in New York at the moment, as you can tell from the blurred hotel background, where I'll be coordinating a really important strategy meeting at the exact same time as the ICRI meeting. So really regret that I can't be with you live, but ICRI, just to emphasize that ICRI plays a critically important role in the work of the CBD, not only informing the decisions and the processes under the Conference of the Parties, but also importantly the implementation of decisions taken under the CBD. And I'm really pleased to be able to have some time to set the scene a bit with a briefing on the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In December 2022, the Conference of the Parties to the CBD at COP15 took a major historic decision in adopting the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This contains a new set of global goals and targets for biodiversity, and perhaps the most ambitious set of global goals and targets for biodiversity that we've ever had. Now, the GBF, of course, has a set of goals and targets, but it comes as part of a package that was a really critically important part of building consensus and actually being able to adopt this framework. And this package includes not only the GBF itself, but also decisions on resource mobilization, capacity building, monitoring framework with indicators, and digital sequence information on genetic resources. Now, an important part of the Global Biodiversity Framework is the deliberate separation between outcome-oriented goals and action-oriented targets. There are a set of goals, 2050 goals, that describe where we wish to see the state of biodiversity and ecosystems by 2050. If we implement a set of action-oriented targets by 2030, these are separated according to reducing threats on biodiversity, meeting people's needs through sustainable use and benefit sharing, and tools and solutions for implementation and mainstreaming. Now, there are 23 targets in total, and many of them, nearly all of them, are highly relevant to ocean, and majority of them also, I'm sure, very relevant to coral reef issues. But just to highlight some that I think are of perhaps heightened interest for many of you, and this includes Target 1 on spatial planning, Target 2 on restoration, Target 3, of course, the famous 30 by 30 target, Target 4 on addressing species, conservation of species, Target 5 on sustainable use, harvesting and trade, Target 8 on climate change and ocean acidification, Target 9 on enhancing the benefits derived from sustainable use, Target 10 on areas under aquaculture, agriculture, fisheries, and forestry, Target 11, as you can see, there's just an enormous number of relevance and linkage between the work that is being done on the ground with respect to coral reefs and these important global targets. But importantly, the Kunming-Montreal framework includes a broader guidance, not just for the goals and targets, and not just the goals and targets themselves, but also important aspects of implementation considerations. As many of you know, if you were engaged or following the negotiations, Section C, which throughout the negotiations was known as Section B bis for a long time, this was a famous section, and actually this took perhaps more work than many to negotiate than many of the targets. It was some very, very important, seen as critically important by many countries, in particular developing countries, and it characterizes the different aspects and the different considerations that need to be taken when implementing the framework. And this includes, just highlighting a few here, issues like the contributions and rights of Indigenous peoples and local communities, the recognition and respect of different value systems, the right to development, the need to take a whole of government and a whole of society approach, and a human rights-based approach, just to name a few. Now, we also, not surprisingly, are often asked the question of where's the ocean target, where's the ocean goal? And this is certainly a logical question, but one thing that we saw in the ICRI biodiversity target work is that the highlighting of oceans and ocean issues, specifically in this few targets, certainly helped to catalyze action, but it also focused attention away from other really important areas. And we sort of missed a focus on some areas because we were directing perhaps uneven focus on certain areas of actions. So here, the goals and targets are crafted to be generic and applicable to all biomes. And in that regard, ocean issues are spread throughout the framework. This speaks to the need to better engage a broader portion of the global ocean community and the need to better address the various drivers of biodiversity loss. So now we're looking to advance the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal framework. Importantly, this includes supporting the uptake of the framework into various global and regional intergovernmental processes, and with respect to the parties, supporting their work in revising and updating their national biodiversity strategies and action plans to implement the framework. There's also ongoing work to further develop the monitoring framework with its indicators. And there's also work, of course, to mobilize the resources necessary to implement the framework, including through the development of a GBF trust fund under the Global Environment Facility. Within the CBD, we're also reviewing all of our programs of work and aligning these with the GBF. There's also work coordinated by the Secretariat to develop thematic capacity building roadmaps. These are just some of the ways in which we're operationalizing and working to operationalize and implement the framework. But of course, there's an enormous amount of work going on around the world with our partners and the broader community. So this is I hope a useful briefing for the GBF to support your deliberations. Of course, I can only cover so much in a short period of time, but nonetheless, I hope it was useful, and I wish you best of luck in your discussions.
Okay, thank you, and I'm very happy that Joe was able to provide us a clear explanation on the global biodiversity framework and also why ocean were not one target, but as he said, they're spread within the global biodiversity framework. As Joe mentioned, like ICRI is a key partner and has been working a lot with the CBD Secretariat to ensure that coral reef were going to be present within the global biodiversity framework. And once now the GBF has been approved, there is still a lot of work to do, especially on monitoring and evaluation, and capacity building. And to this, and ICRI is going to attend like 2 upcoming events organized by the CBD Secretariat. So the first one will be the Sustainable Ocean Initiative workshop. It's going to be held online. The workshop aims to identify capacity needs related to the implementation and monitoring of the GBF. It is expected that for this workshop, a list of priority capacity building needs will be developed. ICRI will be deliver a presentation on capacity building needs related to coral reef for target 1 to 4. So it will be on the June 6th. So we will send you very shortly after this email an email after this meeting an email, and if you would like to contribute or help us to identify some capacity building needs, we'll be happy to integrate them. And the second workshop will be in Cambridge. Tom will be attending this workshop on June 12 to June 14. And this workshop will be mainly focusing on the target 3, which is a target related to the 30 by 30 target. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Lots of going on in this arena. And in addition to the things that you've talked about, and what Chris had intended to talk about, we'll have far more to discuss in September when we meet in Hawaii. So thanks for that background. Next.
I'm sorry, Jenny, if I may add one thing, sorry to cut you off, Jenny. It's during his presentation toward the end, Joe talked about the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan, the NBSAP, and this is to be part of ICRI upcoming work, is how to ensure that coral reef are going to be integrated within the NBSAP. And during the upcoming general meeting, I think we'll have like a full session on this. Sorry again, Jeff, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for that update. Next, we have a report on the Coral Reef Breakthrough. And to speak to that is Margot Hein, who's a consultant for ICRI. And she'll be sharing a summary of the report. Take it away, Margot.
Thank you, Jen. Can I share my screen? Yeah, thank you. Do that. Bear with me for 1 second. All good? Great. Well, thank you very much, Jen, for the introduction. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to share that group. It's very much a work in progress, so I'll try to provide as much as an update as I can for today's meeting. So starting with a little bit of context behind what this 2030 Coral Reef Breakthrough is, the goal is very much to mobilize action to achieve some of those 2030 targets that were set on the one hand by the high-level UN climate champion in the context of the race to resilience and the race to zero, and on the other end to deliver on those Kunming-Montreal global biodiversity framework that were agreed at the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, as we just heard from Joe. But in a nutshell, really the goal of the breakthrough is to develop targets that are science-based, actionable, and measurable, and product will be a very concise and clear document of 3 to 4 pages max, which we're trying to write in a punchy lay language because we're targeting decision makers in media. And also, obviously, the goal of the breakthrough is to align with all those existing targets and initiatives. So the first task, and really the meat of this Coral Reef Breakthrough, is to set 2 key tangible targets that are going to lead to specific action and create momentum to meet global ambitions. So the first target is to secure the future of XX kilometers square of shallow water tropical coral reefs to support the resilience of 1 billion people globally by 2030. And the second target, which supports this first target, is to achieve an investment of XX billion USD by 2030 from public and private sources. And I'll speak to those targets in more details in a second. So in order to achieve this document, to prepare this document, we're very lucky to have a great working group of experts with us. We have right now a little over 25 global experts with expertise that aligns with topics of reef management, blue finance, reef resilience, reef restoration, capacity building, as well as monitoring and evaluation. And we're also getting, of course, a lot of support from the ICRI Secretariat and HADA committees, the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, as well as the UN high-level climate champions. As far as the timeline is concerned, this was the proposed timeline at the beginning of the project. So the working group was first convened for a kickoff meeting in February. We're currently drafting the targets, the text, and the aim is to formally launch the breakthrough at ICRI's 37th General Meeting in September 2023. At that meeting, the breakthrough will be presented to ICRI members for adoption, and then there will be a secondary launch of the breakthrough at the UNFCCC COP28 in November 2023. In terms of where we are at within that timeline, we have already held 2 working group meetings. We have connected with the UN high-level climate champion to review the expectations for that breakthrough. We met with the mangrove breakthrough team. That was really interesting. So the mangrove breakthrough was released last year, and we're able to discuss the process by went through and ask for their advice on how to best proceed with the coral reef breakthrough. And the action points and principles are drafted. I'll give you an idea of how we're looking in a second. And we're also working on actually developing the targets for the breakthrough. So the action points that I was talking about. So these are the 4 draft action points that we have. And really those action points are the backbone to that target of securing the future of XX kilometer square of coral reefs by 2030.
Wow.
So the first action point is to address drivers of loss with abating local drivers of loss, including land-based sources of pollution, destructive coastal development, and overfishing. Action point number 2 is to increase protection and conservation by bolstering resilience-based coral reef conservation efforts. And here we really want the language to align with 30 by 30. Action point 3 is to scale restoration, so supporting innovating solutions at scale and climate smart designs. And action point 4 is to achieve an investment of XX billion USD by 2030 from public and private sources to conserve and revitalize these coastal ecosystems. And actually that 4th action point is the second target for the breakthrough. Now, these 4 targets need to be kept very, very short and punchy. However, they are supported by a set of principles under which we can elaborate a little more and make sure we can word clear best practices. So far we've drafted 7 principles that support the action points. The first principle is to conserve the integrity, functionality, and resilience of coral reef system. The second principle is to employ best practices, climate smart guidelines for intervention. That includes restoration. The third is to monitor strategically and, align with global monitoring framework that are going to happen under GBF and other initiatives. The fourth is to mobilize sustainable finance mechanisms. 5th principle is to empower people, put people first. The 6th principle is to consider local context, under which we will also talk about site prioritization, so protecting reefs that have the greatest value to nature and people. And then the 7th principle is equity and making sure that actions taken to achieve the targets are tailored to support and benefit developing nations in needs, and that first and foremost. Now, on those action points and principles, I want to make sure that they're drafts at this point, and we're working on, further developing them and working through the working group on, whether these are the right action points and principles to go through in the first end, and on the other end on how to properly draft the text around them. I also wanted to talk about those 2 targets specifically before I stop talking. The first target is to secure the future of XX kilometer square of shallow water tropical coral reefs to support the resilience of 1 billion people globally by 2030. Existing mapping tools out there include the Island Coral Atlas, the GCRMN reports, or TNC's Mapping Ocean Wealth Explorers. The key here is to understand how much coral reefs is there out there, what number can we feel confident about, putting out there in terms of having a number that's not just science-based, but also something that is measurable and actionable. So right now we're working with all of those partners and trying to understand the science that went behind estimating the amount of coral reefs around the world, and also working with the working group in terms of making sure we feel confident about the number that we decide to go with. The second target is the dollar value. So here we're convening a special segment of the working group with new finance experts, and that with the help of GFCR. And here again, we want to make sure that the number we end up going through is not random, but supported by science and achievable. In terms of next steps, we have the month of June to finalize the targets, action points, and principles so that we can finalize the text. We're hoping to then have all of it reviewed by the working group and ICRI chairs in July and early August. And as I said earlier, we're shooting for the breakthrough to be launched at ICRI's 37th General Meeting, where it will be presented for adoption to ICRI members. And then we'll have a secondary launch in November at the UNFCCC COP28 in November. And I'm happy to take any questions now if there's time. I don't know, Francis and Jen, or just, answer questions later.
I think we're doing all right on time. Does anybody have a quick question for Margot? Nope, it appears not. Really glad to have you back on board, Margot, to spearhead this effort. It's been a wonderful process so far, and the documents coming together well. Getting agreement on those targets is going to be key. So thank you for your leadership in this effort.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. And I think next we have another poll question. So we'll have Tom launch that.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks, Margot. Yep, so everyone should see the second question for a live poll. So as before, we'll give you a minute or so to respond to this. Just one simple question: will your organisation/country support the coral reef breakthrough? I have a question from Carol, so I wonder if we can take that question from you, Carol, just while we're finishing up with this poll.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry, Jen, I couldn't find the raise hand button for a second there. My question is for Margot, around the social issues that you talked about, equity and so forth. I can imagine that the working group members are members of ICRI. Will you be consulting any social development organizations or experts on the social principles that you talked about?
That's a great question, Carol. Thank you. We do have social experts within the working group that we will be consulting. However, if there's anyone that you're thinking in particular that we should, get in touch with and consult and have a discussion about, those targets and the best way to go around wording best practices in those principles, it'd be very much appreciated.
Oh, definitely. We work with CARE International, and they've been helping us with the gender equity and social inclusion aspects. So happy to pass on their expertise and also the papers they've written for us.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Margot. If we can finish that poll, and hopefully everybody can see the results. So very glad to see that nobody has responded no, and the majority with yes. And as we expected, need to sort of see what those final targets look like. But overwhelming support for that from 72% of you. So thank you very much.
Great. Next slide, please. So next up on the agenda is a presentation on the United Nations Environmental Assembly. I think that Ola was unable to join us, and instead we have, let me go back to my notes.
It's me, Linda Johnson. I'm a colleague of Ola, just to help you out, Jennifer, if that's okay.
Thank you, Linda. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is it okay if I share a screen? Or I don't know if I can actually share my screen. It says I can't.
I think
yeah, maybe someone needs to stop sharing and then I can try. Oh, perfect.
You should
Great.
be able to
I just
now.
have a very short presentation here. Let me know if you can see it. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, perfect. Great. Yeah, thank you so much. So I just wanted to give a quick update on the UNEA resolutions that we're currently reporting on, which is 4.2, and that's on sustainable management for global health of the mangroves. And then we have UNEA resolution 4.13, sustainable coral reef management. And I'm currently reporting on both of these into our UNEA portal. So if you want to see any updates that go further back than December 2022, that's where you can find those. And we're currently in the reporting period for June 2023 that we're preparing for. So we're gathering a lot of information from all of our projects just to see how well we're contributing to the respective resolutions. And just to update everyone, we don't have resolution 212 because that one was closed last year and has been replaced by 413. So if anyone is wondering what happened to 212, that's basically it. So we only have one resolution on coral reefs. And I've broken down this presentation into 3 different categories where I'm gonna explain a little bit what we're doing in the Marine and Coastal Ecosystems unit, which is the one that I'm working in. And then we also have a lot of work from our regional seas colleagues and also those who are working on communication. So I just wanted to separate all of these 3 because they're doing amazing work. And a lot of you who are in this meeting today, of course, contribute significantly to both of these resolutions. So don't feel like I'm leaving anyone out on purpose, but it's just so much to report on that I've just taken out some of the highlights from the previous resolution reporting period, which is June to December 2022. So please, if anyone feel left out, don't do so. I'm hoping that you understand that we are very happy with everyone who has contributed. So just to kick off, we've been working a lot with the Global Fund for Coral Reefs on the M&E framework, and that was there was a soft launch in Monaco, I believe in March, and we're still working a little bit more on that to do a hard and official launch of the M&E framework. So that's just fantastic progress, and some of you who are here today have contributed a lot to that. So give yourself a round of applause. Then we have the ICRI Small Grants program, where 7 out of 10 projects have been completed, and that's in Belize, Costa Rica, the Gambia, 2 here in Kenya, and then 1 in Madagascar and 1 in the Philippines. And we currently have 3 more under implementation. So 1 is in Fiji, and another one is in Haiti, and then a 3rd one is in the Samoa Islands. So that's very exciting as well. Then just a couple of weeks ago, we launched a mangrove and kelp report. I don't know if any of you took part in that webinar as well. So we did that in collaboration with UNEP, WCMC, and Grid Arendal. So that was very nice to finally have those rolled out. Then Ule, who was unable to join us today, unfortunately, he also rolled out a beta version of an online MPA toolbox and learning platform called Empath, which is also a fantastic tool that we're hoping to see more of and actually see how we can use it during project implementation on the ground. Then UNEP has also provided technical support to Indonesia's Ministry of Planning on development of roadmap for a new national master plan on ocean economy. And of course, we also have another report on gender mainstreaming in coastal and marine ecosystem management, principal case studies and lessons learned in 2022. That was launched in 2022. So it's by our colleagues here in the Mombasa office. And I'm pretty sure Chloe is here today, Chloe Harvey, and she's been working very well with us for a very long time. And they have established and worked with 40+ green fins implementation partners. Chloe, correct me if I'm wrong, but just to give some extra kudos on that. So we're very excited to keep working with Reef World Foundation as well. Then from the regional seas, just a quick update that 3 MOUs have been signed between the regional fisheries bodies and the RICAs. And also a very interesting concept note has been developed together with the Nairobi Convention to support the climate change adaptation unit on the source to sea. So we're looking forward to see if that will take off and hopefully see some real progress on the ground as well. And then finally, from regional seas, they have 10 regional seas conventions and action plans that have been developed and adopted legally. They have adopted legally binding instruments on land-based sources. Sorry, that's my bad, a little typo. anyways, so they're also doing a lot on policy and multilateral cooperation. And then on the communications, I don't know if you saw last year, but we had a lot of activity from COM specifically. And one of the major achievements was for the Ocean Conference, as well as the conference in Egypt last week, where Ellie Golding, who is a UNEP Goodwill Ambassador, took place. And we did a fantastic video, which Lisa Rolls, our colleague, has worked very hard on. So I don't know if you've seen that on social media, but it's really impressive work for sure. And then some of you might have seen the Glowing Gone campaign as well, and the Playing for Planet, which reached over 2 million gamers and received about 50,000 pledge signatures. And then again, I'm going to mention the Reef World Foundation, who have also rolled out two communications campaign on the Green Fins, which is fantastic. So I hope everyone has had a chance to go into the Green Fins Hub and see everything that they have there. And I know that some people are interested to know more about the UNEA 6, and I just wanted to give you a very quick overview. So this year's theme, or next year technically, is effective, inclusive, and sustainable multilateral action to tackle climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. So it's a very wide theme, which is good. It can encompass a lot, and the dates have been set to the 26th of Feb to the 1st of March next year. And what's good to know here is that 12 weeks in advance of UNEA, the draft resolutions should have been presented, and they should also be submitted to the annual subcommittee meeting of the CPR from the 20th to the 24th of November, or at least 10 weeks in advance of UNEA. So we don't have any strict guidelines on this, but these are the ones that have worked in the previous UNEA. So that's something to keep in mind if that's something that anyone wants to pursue, and especially since this has to come from the member states, then those are really important dates to keep in mind. And you can find a lot of information just on the website, especially more on the theme and what is expected and what to look out for, and basically a guidance on the submission of the draft resolution. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. I really did a quick run through of everything. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free. But I don't want to take up too much of your time. So yeah, that's what I had today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. I think we're just right about on time. Does anybody have a quick question? Linda covered a huge amount of information there. Okay, I did a quick search on Ellie Goulding and UNEP and came up with a number of different videos. So I'm going to check those out. They look great. So we've concluded the first part of the agenda on international policies, and we're moving now into the plan of action on the first theme. And first up, we have Dylan Horn from the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, who's going to talk about the Ad Hoc Committee on Resilience-Based Management. Take it away, Dylan.
Hello, everyone. And thank you very much for having me. I hope that's working. Hope you can all see that. I'm going to give a hopefully not too exhaustive update of the work of the ad hoc committee. I'm going to focus a little bit on the sort of context and the backstory, you know, how we got to here. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the work that's happening now. And finally finish on some thoughts about opportunities for where, you know, where we could go in the future, and what, you know, what the role of the committee might be in informing resilience-based management going forward. So in terms of a brief recap and context, the committee was formed, the terms of reference for the committee, I should say, came out of the 34th ICRI General Meeting in December.
Sorry to interrupt you. We can't see your screen if you're sharing.
You can't?
No, sorry for cutting you off.
Okay. Hang on. Oh, whoops. Share. There we go. Sorry, I have to apologize because I am quite used to Teams. I don't use Zoom very much. So yeah, my bad. Thank you for that, Tom. Can everybody see that now? All good?
All good, Dylan. Yeah, good to go.
Yeah, nice one. Okay, yeah. So the reference for the committee, as I said, were formed at the ICRI General Meeting in December 2019. The idea was essentially that the committee would help to develop best practice guidelines on actions to support resilience-based management. The committee was then extended at the 36th General Meeting in December of 2021 with quite a similar role and set of objectives in terms of supporting members to implement resilience-based management, providing resources and sharing knowledge and expertise. And as Tom mentioned at the start, the Ad Hoc Committee on Resilience-Based Management can play quite a strong role in contributing to the ICRI Plan of Action, particularly under Theme 1 for the strengthening policies and promoting capacity building aspects of that. Throughout this time, and particularly when my colleague Catherine Martin was chairing the committee, there have been a lot of achievements along the way. A big one is the Resilience-Based Management Policy Brief, published in November of 2021, which I'll come to more. The committee was central in establishing the Resilience Hub on the ICRI website, which holds a whole bunch of useful resources for ICRI members about resilience-based management. There was a bunch of communications products that came out of committee, but more generally, it just provided a really useful means for people to get together, share experiences, and disseminate resources on resilience-based management. Worthy of mention is a key collaboration that happened between members of the Ad Hoc Resilience-Based Management Committee and the Restoration Committee, which was a paper there published in 2022, which went to how to integrate resilience into restoration. And I believe Ian McLeod is going to mention that in his update shortly. So that's a little bit of a sort of update, recap and context in terms of how we got here. I'll linger on this for a second. The Resilience-Based Management Policy Brief. This is probably the key output that's come out of the committee to date. Essentially, it's a policy brief to help decision makers build resilience into their conservation actions. So it goes over why resilience-based management is important and provides some guidance on the type of activities, through these three lenses: community, governance, and ecosystem. Areas of focus, I suppose, for people to implement resilience-based management. And as I said, I will come back to that again. So since July 2022, what has the committee been doing? We started off having a whole bunch of discussions, either one-on-one or regionally based discussions with different members of the committee to understand the needs and where people thought that the committee could go. This came off the back of a little bit of a hiatus, particularly through COVID. And so those first round of discussions were really useful in identifying, essentially how the committee could best add value. And from those discussions came two principles that sort of emerged. The first one was that in the first instance, the work of the committee should seek to support members to put the RBM policy brief into practice. And the idea of that was that we would be building off something that already exists and have some continuity with previous work. And the second principle, which is, builds off the first one, is that the committee really needs to look to build on what is there already and not to duplicate work. There are a lot of resources that already exist on how to do resilience-based management, particularly through TNC's Resilience Network. And so we didn't want to be, duplicating that work basically. And we have looked to ways to, build better links with that and, provide a way to disseminate those existing resources through the committee. Through those conversations, a few ideas for deliverables emerged in terms of potentially holding webinars, consolidating various resources and making them available through the ICRI website. The idea was raised to develop some high-level policy guidance, for example, around the role of resilience-based management in various kind of global policy instruments. And there was also the idea to do to try and do a series of case studies about how ICRI members are putting resilience-based management into practice within their various contexts. And that last idea is the one that we've tried to run with. That brings us to now. Right at the moment, we are working on a set of case studies. I'm actually in the process now of procuring a science writer to bring someone on board to help us write these. And we've been working with various members of the ad hoc committee to pull together existing materials, existing content, and to generate ideas for what the case studies could be. The idea here is that the case studies will essentially demonstrate how various elements of resilience-based management are being put into practice by, across the range of contexts within which ICRI members operate. We're aiming to have hopefully between 5 or 10 by September, by the time of the ICRI General Meeting. And on the radar right now, there's around about 15 that we're looking at from all across the globe, and not just operational, actually doing things in a particular location, but they also include things like evaluation tools, which are really super useful in contributing to some of these components of resilience-based management. That's probably where I'll stop in terms of the work happening now. I thought I would quickly take the opportunity just to also share a thought of where this committee or where the resilience thinking might go in the future and how it could, possibly be most useful to people. And I think something that I have observed through my conversations with managers in many contexts, including, other members of the Resilience-Based Management Committee, but also in a number of other contexts, I've observed that there still is quite a lot of, I suppose, confusion might be one word, but ambiguity might be a better word, in terms of people's understanding of how resilience-based management is implemented. And I think it comes down to a fundamentally different set of perspectives. Government and managers tend to look at their activities through the lens of, you start with the law, you then set policies, and you implement the management. Whereas a lot of the resilience-based management theory talks about things like completing resilience assessments, using decision support to identify interventions, and then you get to the management activities. Ultimately, those two perspectives will lead you to the same activities, or can lead you to the same activities, but they are nonetheless different. And so I think potentially there's the opportunity to try and reconcile those two perspectives. So this diagram here is essentially the same as the previous one. There's just a little bit more detail in terms of, this is how a government or manager might look at, what happens in a particular place. You have your legislation, statutory authority, and then through the various layers of instruments under that, you arrive at operational management activities. I think potentially, rather than thinking about how do we implement resilience-based management, a slight nuance in how you could think about it is, how do we integrate resilience thinking into the perspective of managers? So, for example, at the highest level of legislation, you might think about, how do we develop legislation that explicitly provides for resilience, or resilience-based law? In terms of establishing marine protected areas, how do we design marine protected areas that optimize resilience objectives? You could think about resilience-based policy and strategy. I think a lot of these things here they're entirely consistent with a lot of the guidance that exists already. But this would be a slight nuance of the language that I think may resonate, or could potentially resonate more with managers. And this is something that I would be keen to explore going forward, and with other members of the committee. And that is my update. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Dylan. Looking forward to digging into that more in September with everyone. I think in order to keep on time, we should probably move to our next presentation, which is the Ad Hoc Committee on Reef Restoration, a pre-recorded statement from Ian McLeod, who's also from the Australia Institute of Marine Science and the chair of the Ad Hoc Committee on Reef Restoration.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Ian McLeod and I work for the Australian Institute of Marine Science in Australia, and I'm presenting today about the progress of the Ad Hoc Committee for Reef Restoration. So we have a really active committee, and I'd like to just pause here and thank all these people who are members of the committee and contribute their time and their knowledge to really advanced sharing of information and progress in the fields of restoration and adaptation. Currently, we have 31 active members. These include government officials, researchers, NGO representatives, and field practitioners. We have a real global representation, including large projects and programs. For example, the Reef Restoration Adaptation Program in Australia, and the Shusha Island Reef Build in Saudi Arabia. We also have representation from regional initiatives such as the Coral Triangle Initiative, SPREP, and Commonwealth Blue Charter, from NGOs such as the Nature Conservancy and Reef Guardian, and global initiatives such as UNEP, ICRI, Coral Restoration Consortium, and ICRS, along with 8 countries. We meet about once every quarter at the moment, with 2 online meetings to fit into the 2 main time zones. So our committee has been going since 2019, and our committee aims to assess and document global needs and priorities for current and future reef restoration and adaptation programs, global research and development priorities to develop the methods, productivity, and cost breakthroughs needed to support restoration and adaptation program objectives, priority drivers and areas for reef investment, including mitigation policy, and to identify and improve joint planning and delivery of reef restoration, adaptation, research and development, and identify at a high level opportunities to partner. So over the last few years, some of the highlights have been establishing a restoration hub on the ICRI website, which is a one-stop shop to see the latest news about restoration and to see and to find some guidance materials and really to find any background information you need. We also supported online training and capacity building with an online course through the Reef Resilience Network. And we hosted a workshop between the restoration and resilience-based management ad hoc groups. And this was published by Dr. Elizabeth Shaver in Global Change Biology in 2022. Last year, we had focus on supporting the CBD targets for coral. Really great representation at ICRS, at the major conference, and at the Reef Futures Conference in Florida, where at the Reef Futures Conference, there was a policy and regulation workshop, which was well attended. This year, our goals are to continue to maintain the ICRI Reef Hub for the latest information, update materials and conduct mentor training again, and to continue to build on the National Academy recommendations. That's the US National Academy did a study on interventions, and we're still working through those recommendations about ongoing R&D to develop new interventions. We'll also continue to link with the Resilience-Based Management Ad Hoc Committee, particularly around the CBD post-2020 goals. We've also just recently submitted a book chapter contributing to the Nature Restoration book commissioned as part of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. This focuses on the age of intervention and the role of coral reef restoration in a changing climate. And we highlighted ambitious R&D programs around the world as part of this book chapter. This book chapter also allowed us to really consolidate some of the new interventions that have been developed through programs such as the Reef Restoration Adaptation Program, and think how they fit in within a toolbox of tools for resilience-based management. So the 4 really large programs that we highlighted in this chapter were Reef Fence, which is a 5-year program to develop next generation hybrid reefs. So these are really focused on wave protection. They include artificial structures, but also looking to either build oyster reefs or coral reefs to help mitigate coastal flooding, erosion, and storm damage, particularly around US military infrastructure. So a really ambitious and really interesting program. We highlighted the Reef Restoration and Adaptation Program, which I'm the program director for in Australia. And it's a really interesting time for RAP. We're almost 3 years through our initial 4-year R&D block, and really now focusing on translation to deployment and getting ready for some pilot scale field trials. We highlighted the CALS Seascape Restoration Initiative, which is collaboration between NEOM and also led through CALS University. And that initiative has a goal of building a 100-hectare reef restoration project, which is really large scale compared to what's been achieved in the past. And we also highlighted Mission Iconic Reefs, which is focusing on 7 of the iconic reef systems in Florida Keys, and have a 20-year restoration plan for those 7 reefs. So what's next? So our plans for 2023 are onwards to advise the 2023 Coral Reef Breakthrough, which you heard about previously. There's been a real call and need for collaboration around policy and regulation. So we hope to support that. A really key part of this, the value of this committee is just an opportunity to share information among projects and programs. So we've got the most accurate and up-to-date information. It really provides a lot of great opportunities for collaboration and knowledge sharing. A lot of these programs are now developing new interventions, and the landscape has changed since our last major report back in 2020. So we're really thinking about how we can integrate these new interventions into the toolbox for resilience-based management and get those out into the into reports and into the published literature. And I'll also shamelessly plug a conference coming up down under, the GBR Intervention Symposium, which is currently planned for April 2024. So you'll hear more about that shortly. And just want to note again, we're really focusing, keeping everything, all the latest news and information on this ICRI Restoration Hub. So to let people know, that's a really useful place to go. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So that wraps up theme 1. And before we jump into theme 2, which you just saw a sneak peek there with the slide on GCRMN, I think we have time to take a very quick break. 5-6 minutes. People can grab another cup of coffee or get a snack. Is that good, Tom and Francis? Are we good on time? Okay, so we'll see you back in, let's say, 5 minutes.
Various subject matter brings together various subject matter experts who are working on data management improvements and on innovative analysis platforms, for example, Reef Cloud and Data Mermaid, which many of you are familiar with. And these new platforms and new technologies will really change the way how we can do coral reef monitoring. Also, all activities over the next few years will aim to empower the regional coordinators and the regional nodes, which are the main mechanism for working towards delivery of the 4 goals. And I will give a short rundown of the regional updates in a minute. And then there's a few additional focus areas. Obviously, transparency and communication will be key within the network. Integrating ecological and socioeconomic monitoring better, and also updating of manuals and protocols, which are now getting quite outdated. And as managing coral reefs is all about managing people, further update on the ICRI Global SOCMON Monitoring Initiative. And many of you will know about this initiative. Human dimensions data are needed for decisions that consider a balance of both human well-being and ecological health. And the SOCMON initiative is providing that data as it is conducted with assessments across 42 countries. And in the last couple of weeks, 2 important new documents have been published. So that is the Global SOCMON Strategic Plan, setting out a path for the way forward 22 to 26. And then also the Global SOCMON Report 22, which has the title From More Than 20 Years of Socioeconomic Assessments, Challenges and Opportunities. And this report is really the sister report to the Biophysical 2020 Global Report. So now very briefly to updates from the regions. I will present updates from 5 out of the 10 GCRMN regions. And you will see a theme here, and that would be the desire for better data management, which is really at the network level is our main goal, but also in the regions, it really drives the activities in the regional nodes. So first in the ROCMI region, which stands for the 8 nations that are bordering the Persian and Arabian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. That node held a Northeastern Arabia Coral Reef Monitoring Network workshop just 2 weeks ago. It brought together regional experts to standardize coral reef monitoring practices and share survey data. And the primary outcome of this workshop was an agreement to establish a cohesive and comprehensive regional assessment in that region by May 24. So quite ambitious. Next, the Western Indian Ocean region. And that node has implemented over the last couple of years a regional red list of ecosystems assessment of the Western Indian Ocean coral reefs. And currently work is underway to increase the utility of this analysis to support national ecosystem reporting under the Global Biodiversity Framework. The regional network was also revitalized with a workshop held in March, and they established a new technical working group on coral reefs under the umbrella of the Nairobi Convention. And again, this will focus on data management, improving monitoring for fish, and also building capacity and collaborations within the region. In the Pacific region, which is a very large region, the node is currently working on a new regional report and aims to complete it by the end of this year. The group is gathering and standardizing monitoring data, and the new Pacific report will also be used as a case study for implementing a novel approach in data integration. And if that works fine, that will be rolled out probably across the network. And then the East Asia region, the last report was published only in 2021, and you had a presentation on that at the last general meeting. And a workshop in that region is planned in June alongside the 5th Asia Pacific Coral Reef Symposium in Singapore. And that workshop also will start discussion on the next analysis and the regional database. And lastly, the Caribbean node has developed a new work plan for the next couple of years. And the focus there is on strengthening capacity building in monitoring, increasing the integration of SOCMON in the monitoring efforts, adapting GCRMN protocols and guidelines to better address emerging issues in the region. And again, the theme, improving data management integration for the analysis, for better analysis for future regional and global reporting. And then also, as the nodes do, they are very active in capacity and capability building. So they are developing training programs for integrated reef monitoring for MPA managers. And with that, thank you, and our main contacts here for GCRMN.
Thank you, Britta. And I think we're going to have a quite robust session on GCRMN at the in-person general meeting in Hawaii as well, and integration of the social science through SOCMON. We're trying to do the same thing here in the United States with our National Coral Reef Monitoring Program, making those linkages between social science and biophysical more obvious. So next we are going to slide into updates on the ICRI 37th general meeting, and Tom and I are going to do that in partnership. So why Hawaii? The United States is chairing the ICRI for right now, and we definitely wanted to highlight the beauty of US coral reefs and introduce many of you to what's going on in terms of management of US reefs, and particularly in the Pacific, to be able to highlight some of the less, trying to phrase this the right way, sort of the blending of science-based management as a lot of academics understand it, but also looking at how Native Hawaiians and indigenous groups have been managing these resources for far longer than you might consider traditional science, integrating those practices and understanding how to blend the two together and understand traditional management of resources and the real resurgence that's happening, particularly in US Pacific Islands. It's been great to see. And we're building off of the very successful US Coral Reef Task Force meeting, which happened in Kona last summer, and hoping to replicate many of the different things that we were able to experience and learn about in terms of Native Hawaiian and indigenous peoples management efforts, and will blend in other ICRI nations experiences as well. So that really hits on theme number 4, which is all about diversity and inclusion and expanding the coral reef community. So we wanted to share with you some opening and closing protocols for the meeting itself that in a very meaningful way incorporate the local Hawaiian community, which was very powerful and moving for us last year, and also wanted to highlight some other traditional cultural exchanges and listening sessions in the process. So we're hoping everyone can join us, and are furiously planning to pull this off in September, despite a few hiccups along the way. So Tom, if you want to switch to the next slide, and then you can go through what we've got already planned for a general outline of the meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jennifer. So recently, well, quite a while ago, we shared a save the date with all ICRI members. So hopefully the general meeting is in all your calendars. And as Jennifer has said, that we're working frantically behind the scenes in terms of the logistical arrangements. And we'll hopefully share those in due course with you, but very, very soon. And as part of that logistical sort of setup, in terms of looking at the outline of the general meeting. So what we're planning for at the moment is to start the week off with 2 days with the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network and a steering committee meeting. And then we'll, on the evening of the 19th, we'll hopefully organise a ICRI welcome reception. And then we'll move into those significant cultural exchanges and listening sessions. And as Jen said, the whole premise behind this was we really wanted to embed those discussions and those conversations throughout the ICRI General Meeting. So we've put those at the start, and then we'll move into the ICRI General Meeting segment from the 21st through to the 23rd. And as mentioned, we will communicate with the logistical information as soon as we have that for you. And also there is a dedicated webpage for the ICRI General Meeting, which the URL is on the screen, and we'll constantly update that with further information as well. Next slide, please. So we do have some limited funding available to support the participation of some ICRI members, and really building on theme 4 of the plan of action. Those decisions to allocate funding will have some criteria within there with respect to theme 4, and we'll be in contact with you in due course with respect to that available funding. But please feel free to reach out to Francis or myself or Marco with respect to further questions on that limited available funding. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the run-up to the general meeting, for those of you that have attended general meetings before, there's various sort of key dates and milestones prior to actually arriving at the general meeting. So we've put in a preliminary date for June the 1st to open online registration, but we'll communicate with you all shortly with respect to that, and that will really be dictated on where we are with the logistical information. But that's what we're aiming for. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so, you'll receive some communication with respect to registration. From June the 12th, we'll release the members report, the members template, sorry, for you to fill out and submit. The draft agenda should be made available, and also the template for submitting motions for the general meeting. Towards the end of July, July 28th, we'll set a deadline to provide comments on the agenda or to propose new agenda items, which will then lead on to the deadline for submitting motions on August the 18th. We've set a date for September the 1st as a deadline for submitting your member reports. But again, these may change slightly, but this is what we're aiming to at the moment. And then on September the 4th, the final agenda will be posted alongside the motions for review in advance of the meeting. And if all goes well, commence the meeting on September 10th. Okay, next slide. So we have another poll question for you all. So hopefully this will come live onto your screens. And we'd like to know, are you planning to attend the ICRI General Meeting? If you are selecting no or not sure, there is a second question we'd appreciate if you could alleviate on your answer as well, in terms of why you're not sure if you're not planning to attend. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I don't see any further responses, so I think we can end that. But thank you very much for all your responses in that. It's super important to us as we're sort of planning the general meeting and all the logistical information as well. And just to re-note as well, if you are looking for support to attend, please don't hesitate to contact us, to Francis and myself or Margot. Thank you very much. Jen, back to you.
Thanks. Hopefully we're getting lots of yeses. Moving on in the agenda, next up is a presentation on progress with the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, and Yaba and I will be tag teaming that presentation. So first up is Yaba, and I believe he will be sharing some slides.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer, Francis, and Tom, for the opportunity to present this update. Here is the PowerPoint. Just confirming everyone can see it. Okay, great. So I think most of you are somewhat familiar with the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, so I'll try to skip a lot of the background information. But as a quick recap, the Global Fund for Coral Reefs was established in September 2020 as a coalition that looks to protect the most resilient reefs around the world. This is what our global coalition looks like, and we are very proud to have ICRI as one of our key partners in this coalition. And not only a key partner, ICRI was basically part of the group that actually created the GFCR. So the partnership between both initiatives really goes back to 2018, and since then we have been working together for coral. As you can see, also there is a lot of congruence between ICRI membership and members of the GFCR coalition, and this includes donor governments that are part of ICRI and part of our executive board of the grant fund, UN agencies like UNDP and UNEP, GFCR recipient countries that you see flags here for those for which we already have programs approved. You see logos of our partners that are implementing GFCR funded activities throughout the different regions in which we work. So really, it is a natural partnership for ICRI and the GFCR. Very quickly, a reminder that we work on a blended finance approach, and as part of the coalition's approach, we have two main instruments that anchor our work: the grant fund, which sits within the United Nations and has as its maximum decision-making body the GFCR Executive Board, and then we have the GFCR Investment Fund, which is managed by Pegasus Capital Advisors. And by bringing together this grant fund and the private finance aspects, what we are trying to do and aiming to do is to catalyze with the use of grant resources in the form of technical assistance, concessional loans, or guarantees, the development of what we call reef positive solutions. And that includes reef positive businesses in the areas of sustainable fisheries, aquaculture, mariculture, ecotourism, and so on. And also the development and implementation of new and innovative financial mechanisms that can direct new resources for coral reef protection. And some of these, for example, can include blue carbon schemes, reef insurance mechanisms, and others. Talking about our executive board in the GFCR grant fund, I would like to very quickly highlight that as of January this year, we have two new co-chairs, and they are Brian Colson, who heads the Blue Plant Fund at DEFRA in the UK, and Leticia Carvalho, who is the head of the Marine and Freshwater branch of UNEP based in Nairobi. And as you can see, we probably recognize that some of our other board members are also members of ICRI. So again, that partnership and synergy between both institutions really runs through every aspect of our work. In terms of where the grant fund is currently operating, as of now, we have 10 programs that have been approved by the GFCR Executive Board, and that cover 13 countries. Fiji, the top program there, was our first program approved and launched in 2021. And currently under development, we have 8 programs that cover 8 countries. You can see in the map that we have quite a broad geographic spread of the grant fund activities, and 52% of our portfolio is SIDS and LDCs. Also, by looking at the list of countries for which programs have been approved or are under development, you can see that all of those are also ICRI members. In terms of where our partners from the investment fund stand, in 2002, they established their team. They also developed their investment strategy, which focuses on 3 main areas, including sustainable ocean production, again, focusing on those areas that I mentioned before: sustainable fisheries, mariculture, aquaculture, hospitality, which basically focuses on ecotourism, and also waste management, which includes wastewater management and plastics management. So far, they have been canvassing potential investment opportunities throughout the world, and they have identified an initial investment for the investment fund in the Bahamas, and they are working towards identifying future deals in other countries where we work. And as part of the collaboration between the grant fund and the investment fund, what we are actually doing is that the grant fund is helping to build the enabling environment so that reef positive business solutions can actually thrive. And that includes actually the investments that the investment fund is going to be doing through the resources that they have from the Green Climate Fund, Minderoo Foundation, and Builders Vision at the moment. So under the grant fund, we are basically going to be supporting enabling conditions such as the policy frameworks, monitoring and evaluation, consultations with community, further technical assistance that can be either prior to the investment or post the investment, so that work that the investment fund is going to do is going to be successful. This is done because normally investors are worried about the risks associated with working, and particularly in developing countries. and countries that don't have the economies that advanced, and therefore the grant fund is actually required to help de-risk the investment fund and impact investors in general. Okay. In terms of resource mobilization, just to quickly highlight that as of today, under the grant fund, we have mobilized about $85 million, and the investment fund has mobilized $135 million. This is still far from what we know coral reefs require, but we are making strong efforts to continue to mobilize resources for the GFCR and therefore to support the most resilient reefs around the world. But really, thank you to all of our donors, some of you who may be present here today for your support and trust in the GFCR. In terms of early lessons learned, in this last 2.5 years, what we have seen is the following. Building a blended finance approach is definitely not easy. It's quite complex to try to accomplish this triple bottom line returns on the environment, having positive impact on the environment, having positive impact for people, and having positive economic returns is definitely not an easy task. And in order to be able to really measure this and to advance this, we are developing the monitoring and evaluation system that Linda mentioned before, with the support of the Wildlife Conservation Society as well. And that monitoring and evaluation system should be available in a month or less. We have also seen that engaging with local communities is key. They are the stewards of coral reefs around the world, and without their engagement, no single reef positive solution is actually going to be successful. And part of the lesson learned here is that explaining or creating a blended finance approach for reef positive solutions is something that is completely new, not only for investors or even for conservation organizations, but also for the local communities. So we need to spend more time on educating the different stakeholders on how these reef positive solutions through a blended finance approach are built. And for that reason, the GFCR recently launched at COP15 in Montreal, the Reef Plus platform, which is a knowledge sharing platform that is going to help us bridge that knowledge gap and also showcase the reef positive solutions that we are building around the world. In terms of government engagement, we have also seen that without properly engaging with governments, we're also not going to be successful. There are a lot of factors around policy frameworks that need to be strengthened in order for these reef positive businesses to be successful. So again, that is a role where the grant fund can support in building the enabling environment. In terms of the investments in general, we are seeing 4 main lessons learned, and with that I'll end and pass on to Jen. First, the risk profile of ODA countries, which is where we work for the most part, is still something that it's a barrier for investors to come into the picture. What we have also seen is that in programs where we can actually already start to create a pipeline of reef positive businesses and solutions, these solutions are not yet completely investment ready. Why? Because they still need some more work, for example, around that policy framework, or they need more work related to monitoring and evaluation and creating the right baselines to really become truly investable. The other thing that we are seeing is that the amount of investment required, the size of the investment is probably low compared to what most investors are willing to put to the table. So the deals are yet basically not big enough. And in the case of the investment fund, which in the GFCR case is looking for large ticket items, what we are seeing also is that that fund, like many other investment funds, they require additional resources in the form of technical assistance so that they can really design their deal appropriately. And these technical assistance resources are not resources that normally an investment fund puts on the table. So we do need to collaborate in that regard. And that's really what a blended finance approach is. Very quickly, just to highlight some of the key events where the GFCR plans to be present this year. Of course, we are planning to be part of the ICRI General Meeting and be there with Jen and with Tom, Francis, and all of you. Our main event this year is going to be COP28, in Dubai, and into 2024, we foresee a busy year for us with the Biodiversity Convention, with the Climate Change Convention, with the UNEA meeting in Nairobi, the UN General Assembly, and then of course in 2025, we're already looking at the 3rd UN Ocean Conference to take place in France. Jen, over to you.
Thank you. Great overview. So I was asked to sit on the advisory board, and I'm honored to do so. So I'm going to provide a little bit of background on what the advisory board does. It's a multi-stakeholder body composed of independent group of experts designed to provide recommendations and advice both to the global executive board of the grant fund as well as the investment committee and the investment fund. So lots of folks to keep track of and lots of activities that they're undertaking. So our primary function is really to discuss progress, challenges, and lessons learned and relay best practices for coral protection and management to this group of leaders within the fund. We also advise on strategic issues put forward by the executive board and the investment committee. We review coordination between the grant and investment window and recommend ways to enhance alignment and support the Global Fund for Coral Reefs engagement in international activities, much like this, and high-level events in relevant forums with which Yaba just went through for the next couple of years. So to deliver on all of those functions, the advisory board aims to meet twice a year with roundtable discussions framed around 4 principal topics. Those topics are the annual report, the strategic plan, monitoring and evaluation, and safeguards, and then strategic engagement support. So I think next slide, Yaba. In terms of how the advisory board is composed, you can see the current members there. So the advisory board is definitely comprised of experts who are separate from the Global Fund for Coral Reefs UN Global Team, the executive board, the investment committee, the convening agents of the grant fund, and the implementing partners of the institutional partners. We are meant to be 11 members in total, with scientists, private sector, and blue economy experts, and the government and policy experts, with at least 7 members required to be from the global south and a minimum of 6 women. We have definitely hit the 6 women there, and the global south challenge as well. And to date, we do have 9 members, but there's 2 members pending identification. And ICRI and the Green Climate Fund are proud to have been designated as co-chairs of the advisory board. So our first meeting, I think next slide, Rabba, was in March 28 of 2023. And we've put together some of the high-level takeaways there from that meeting. We had emphasize the importance of having a more diverse group of co-implementers, especially local organizations, less emphasis on the large international NGOs for implementation purposes. The advisory board supports the pursuit of programs and interventions that not only focus on conservation and biodiversity, but really looking at how do we uplift local communities, how do we empower them, how do we enable them to become stewards of their resources in a really meaningful and successful way. The advisory board members made note that it will take time to scale reef positive solutions up to the $10 million range, therefore requiring more initial investment in incubation, technical assistance, and blended finance solutions. I think this speaks a lot to the need for on-the-ground capacity building. And then finally, we're keen to contribute to the Global Fund's M&E framework. So it's been a quick interaction with advisory members so far, but look, I'm very much looking forward to digging in our second meeting, which will be likely in the September 2023 range, hopefully in coordination with the in-person GM meeting. So we're working with Yaba to see if we can pull that off, or if it'll be a different venue for that interaction to take place. I think next up is you to conclude the update on GFCR.
Yes, thank you, Jen. And with that, we actually conclude the update from the Global Fund for Coral Reefs. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And next up is a presentation on another global investment in coral reef science. So we've got Rory Jordan from the Coral Research and Development Accelerator Program, headquartered at KAUST. And you'll recall that CORDAP came out of G20 when the Saudis, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, was the president of the G20 at that point in time. And lots of progress has been made on the CORDAP front as well. So Rory, take it away.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I hope people can hear me and see the screen.
You're good.
Okay, so moving straight in, as Jennifer mentioned, this came out of the G20 from the Saudi presidency in 2020. We have made a lot of progress. That started with the inauguration of the Initiative Governing Committee, which is a lot of member states, with 15 member states, and also many advisory members, of which ICRI and the Global Fund for Coral Reef are two. Then the setup of the Scientific Advisory Committee was formed. We produced our strategic plan. The strategic plan set forth the priorities for the first funding call, which we launched last year in September 22. And we're now in the final stages of evaluating that. There was also a number of scoping studies and scoping areas identified, which were areas the Scientific Advisory Committee felt needed. There was information gaps, more information was needed before we could select priority areas for funding into those, but also to align global efforts in those R&D areas. The most significant piece of information recently is the charitable foundation has been formally established. So this will be the CORDAP legal entity, which will be able to accept donations and contributions as we move forward to resource the programs into the future. We now hope to have the first roadmaps from the scoping studies published. We'll update the strategic plan very soon, next call, and hopefully expand the membership we have. We're in discussions with a number of countries and coral agencies. So just to give you an idea of our governance, we have the foundation now, which has been formally established, which will accept donations and contributions. We're run by the Initiative Governing Committee, which is run by the member countries. Its chair is Saudi Arabia. Jennifer Koss is actually the vice chair, which we're honored to have. And just in case anybody felt there was a global initiative that she wasn't chairing, we have the Scientific Advisory Committee, which guides the scientific direction of all the research and programs that we run. I work in KAUST in the central node. We're pretty much the administrative backbone of CORDAP. We try to make everything enable, and we will look after the grants, make the awards, and the research programs. Our founding commitment is actually 10 million a year, very generous, 10 million a year for 10 years from Saudi Arabia. Our target is actually to raise 30 million a year to fund programs for R&D and coral. So just to give you a recap of the Coral Accelerator program, which is currently underway and about to hopefully make our funding decisions. This funds international collaborative research teams. We have a minimum of 3 applicants. One of them must be from a developing or least developed country. It's a wide range, very open call. However, the projects must deliver scalable, transferable, and affordable solutions. So we're interested in solutions which will enable conservation and restoration on a larger scale. They must be transferable, not just for one particular area. And obviously affordable is a very high premium. They can be up to 3 years, and the maximum request is $1.5 million per project. We received a total of 89 proposals to this call in September, with a total request of just over $112 million. And after the concept note review, 28 proposals were invited to submit a full proposal, which are currently undergoing the 5 stage of evaluation. And we're hoping that fund decisions and notifications will be expected this summer. And just for everybody to note, we expect to open our next call, the 2023 call, in early September of this year. But we will keep people well advised of any developments on that. This is just to give you a small idea of the submissions that we had. We had submissions from a huge number of countries, about 66 countries altogether, most led by the USA and Australia, which we expected given the large research communities in there. But we're delighted to find that 33 were led by developing countries, most of those from Indonesia, and then the Maldives and Kenya and Colombia. The scoping studies, just to give you an idea of these are planning and technology roadmap studies with a workshop to bring together experts in the field around the world for about 3 days to discuss, deliberate, and develop recommendations. The areas that we've held these so far is natural and assisted adaptation, which was led by AIMS. The workshop was held in January at KAUST, and they are in the final stages of developing of the roadmap, which we hope to publish soon. Coral Aquaculture Innovative Technologies for Reef Restoration, that was co-hosted by ourselves and the Coast Reefscape Restoration Initiative. And again, that roadmap will be published soon. Cold water corals, which is one area which is a big part of CORDAT's remit, but less studied. There was a study workshop hosted by Rev Ocean just a couple of weeks ago in Oslo, Norway, which was very productive. And we hope to have a provisional roadmap for that very, very soon. And we may pass it around for input from everybody. The ecological risk is one which we will hope to host later on this year. And that will document the current state of knowledge in managing ecological risk of reef interventions and give some guidance on priority areas of which further work can be done. So what's coming soon? On the right, you'll see a picture there of one of the recent presentations of the G20 in India, where CORDAT is one of the 4 ocean-related actions in the G20, and hopefully one of the more successful one. But the Ocean 20 launch event in Indonesia, which was started, is a very important ocean initiative for corals as well. So as I said, we're in the final stages of the Coral Accelerator Program evaluation. We hope to soon publish the first CORDAT technology roadmaps. We'll be discussing and developing the next funding call priority areas. We'll continue the foundation operational setup and operationalize that here in Saudi with offices possibly abroad. We'll expand the program resourcing activities, which are becoming a very important part now that we actually have the legal entity of the foundation. And we're starting to build more engagement with UN activities such as the Race to Resilience and Ocean Decade. We're also looking at coral partnerships for COP28 in terms of pavilion space and events. So that's the quick one. I hope we kept within time there. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Rory. I think next on the agenda is upcoming events, and Francis and Dylan will do a quick overview of several events on the near-term horizon.
No, thank you, Jen. In fact, it would be Tom and Dylan.
Ah, sorry.
We changed it.
Perfect, thank you. So whilst we're appreciative, there's lots of upcoming events. We just wanted to highlight a few moving forward where ICRI will be present and involved. So the first one coming up in June will be the Asia Pacific Coral Reef Symposium, and myself, Francis and Britta will all be present at APCRS. So please do let us know if you'll be attending. ICRI will have a booth, and we're very much like to catch up with all of those that will be attending. Additionally, ICRI will be presented by myself during a panel with respect to the UN Ocean Decade, which is being hosted by NOAA, and Britta will also be moderating that event, and there will be a sort of key focus on early career ocean professionals, ICRI's contribution to the Ocean Decade, and general themes around restoration, resilience, the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, and of course, theme 4. Next slide, please. Very quickly, just to note, in July, the ICRI has collaborated with the Mir Puri Foundation to support the Ocean Award, which will be launched at the Mir Puri Foundation Sailing Trophy in July 2023. The award is centered around submissions of scientific posters, and if there is anybody interested to submit a poster, the deadline is June 2nd, 2023. Next slide. And I'll hand over to Dylan for an update on the Pacific Coral Reef Collective.
Thanks, Tom. The Pacific Coral Reef Collective is an event that the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority is hosting in Cairns in sunny North Queensland at the end of July and the start of August. The dates are the 30th of July to the 5th of August. And the idea is to bring together reef managers and partners from across the Pacific to, collectively talk about shared challenges facing coral reefs and explore solutions. The event's going to be run across a week or so, and it will include a series of site inspections and collective thinking workshops to cover themes like challenges in management, recovery and protection, community engagement, monitoring and technology, and managing sea country, working with First Nations peoples. We initially invited 2 delegates from each of the SPREP Pacific member countries. And after working with Francis, Jen, and Mike from NOAA, we've been able to identify some others from Micronesian countries and additional Pacific members. And so the deadline for the RFP for that is this Friday. Planning is coming along pretty well for that. And that's me.
Thank you very much, Dylan. And if anybody has any questions or anything about the upcoming events, please do feel free to reach out. I believe we should have a poll question.
Not seeing it yet.
No, I don't see it either, Jen. So I think let's just move forward with the planning for El Nino.
Okie dokie. This is the time in the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force when we have my colleague, Dr. Derek Manzallo, provide a forecast on bleaching globally and then highlighting U.S. coral reefs. And we call him Dr. Doom because it's usually unfortunate information. So I will channel my inner Derek here. And unfortunately, NOAA has issued an El Nino watch recently and forecasting that there's an 80% chance of at least a moderate El Nino happening and 55% chance of a strong El Nino. Hopefully most folks on the phone know the mechanics of what happens in the Pacific Ocean in terms of trade winds shifting. El Nino is when trade winds tend to die down a little bit and warmer waters migrate from the Western Pacific into the Eastern Pacific and create conditions ideal for bleaching. In strong El Nino years, we do see a lot of mortality. So also of note, there's a 5 to 10% chance that tropical atmosphere may not couple with the ocean and the El Nino may fail to materialize. So these are longer term forecasts that we're only reacting to the trends we're seeing right now. Right now, there's bleach level heat stress is already occurring in the Eastern Pacific Ocean and more is expected. In the meantime, it would be great if folks who are in the Pacific region who have the wherewithal to get out on the water and actually validate whether bleaching is occurring, if we could send information to Dr. Derek Manzallo or Jackie Shapo, we can provide a link as well. I think Lexi's actually putting it in the chat. They've updated a form for us that we can use. So if you do see bleaching, there's a quick Google form. I don't think there's a lot on it just to validate, and we can constantly improve the Coral Reef Watch capabilities for predicting and then ground truthing when and where bleaching occurs. So that's a quick update there. More to come on that, especially in Hawaii. Hopefully we'll get Derek out and he can do a bit more of a presentation on the dynamics that we're seeing happening in the Pacific right now. Think we are now on to closing remarks. Is that right, Tom?
Absolutely, yes. And we just drop this slide in just to remind everybody that if you don't already, please do connect with ICRI on Twitter and via LinkedIn and via the website. And if you have not yet subscribed to ICRI's newsletter, please do so. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Well, we are just a minute over time, so that's actually great to have stayed on time so well. So thank you so much for everybody who participated, especially for all of the different financial contributors to our ICRI efforts, and really good to hear highlights from everybody on what's going on. So much wonderful action happening at the international level, and really sort of an amassing of expertise and willingness to make a difference for corals. So it's been a real pleasure to host this meeting, and we're very much looking forward to seeing everybody in Hawaii. And I would particularly like to thank the Secretariat who made this look seamless. Francis, Tom, and Margot are doing a wonderful job and have kept the NOAA and Department of State folks on a good timeline and make sure that we're messaging appropriately and highlighting the wonderful work that's being done. Before I close out, I'm wondering if Francis and Tom, Margot, anything on your end, and then we'll have Case Prager, who's with Department of State, say a few concluding remarks.
No, thank you, Jenna. On my side, it's all good. Again, thank you for everybody, especially for colleagues from the Pacific. It's getting quite late, so much appreciated. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Hawaii in a couple of months. And I'm not sure if Tom or Margot wants to add something. Otherwise, Case, you can conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Case?
Hi, everyone. I am Case Prager, and I'm at the U.S. Department of State in the Office of Conservation and Water. And I work really closely with Christine Dawson, who, as Jen said, sends her regrets and apologies for not being with us today. So I just wanted to say very quickly and reiterate what Jen said, just a big thank you to all of you for being here today and for all of these really helpful and exciting updates, and to the Secretariat for pulling us all together. And we're really looking forward to the general meeting in September in Hawaii and continuing these discussions. So thank you to all of you for helping get us started. So looking forward to seeing you, many of you, hopefully in September.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.